One man. Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. Oh, no, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to the Three Technique, our off-season survival guide series. And Garrett, tonight, my background sort of looks a little different. If you could see that way, if you're watching on YouTube, it would look a lot different. We're in the middle of our ceiling falling in due to storm damage. But you know what? The show goes on, and we've got stock to buy in teams. We've got no spring games to talk about. So, of course, we're recording a podcast tonight. How are you?
Dude, we're making it, right? You said off-season survival guide. I didn't realize we were going to be spending, we probably could spend a good 30 minutes on the show just talking about what we're currently doing and how to survive all of that, right? I'm in the throes of baby stuff. Trey's off. He's got some things he's taking care of. You've got your, ceiling coming, down on top of you. So there's quite a few things we could talk about tonight, but I guess we'll keep it on college football. I guess we can still talk about that. It is a college football podcast. It's what the people came for.
That's right. I mean, listen, as the wise writings often say, when life is throwing ceiling tiles at you and eggshells at you, there's always college football. So
I thought you were going to say something like, when life throws ceiling tiles at you, make ceiling tile 8 or something. And I was like, I don't think that applies here.
We're trying to practice what we preach, fall in line with that. But no, we do have some fun things to talk about tonight. We'll talk about the no spring games. Is that good for college football? Will we ever see the return of the spring games? As now more and more programs, for one reason or the other, are deciding that they're not going to have them. We're buying stock in a couple of programs tonight, and we're going to look at USC as well towards the top of the show here. A lot of momentum right now in the public sphere. A lot of media personalities espousing the virtues of USC, saying they're the next team kind of on the rise. I've got my doubts, so we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But of course, this episode, all of our episodes, brought to you by the good friends over at homefieldapparel.com. You can continue to use our code 3TechPod for 15% off your entire first order, or you can buy through the link in our social media descriptions. Helps continue to support the show. They're doing some NASCAR releases right now. Garrett, I don't know if you're into the Great Left Turn. Not necessarily my thing, but boy, they've got some fun looking jackets coming out right now.
I just hear fast and left, and we're going hard and we're going left. Yeah, so that's kind of what I think of when I think NASCAR. It's kind of enjoyable. I know a couple of guys. Teddy Moore, a friend of the show, his dad's huge on the NASCAR stuff too. His dad loves just sitting there and enjoying a couple of adult beverages and watching the cars go in circles all afternoon. So not maybe something for me, but I guess, other people would complain about me watching golf. Like, how are you going to watch a little ball fly through the sky? I'm like, yeah, it's different. We all have our thing, right?
We do all have our thing. I'm thrilled that our main thing on this show, in life in general, seems to be college football. And boy, it gives us things to talk about all off season long. So let's dive into the first topic that we had tonight, the no spring games for the major programs. Garrett, it seems like it's a watershed moment where, sure, you could maybe get away with some programs like Missouri saying, logistically, it just doesn't really make sense for us this year. We've got some stadium renovations, this, that, and the other. And then you've got schools like Nebraska and Ohio State and Texas that are like, yeah, we don't really love our players being poached by other schools after they get to watch our spring game. Maybe they see a sophomore who's buried on the depth chart. He's not going to play this year. Insert program X who comes in and says, but you can play here. And suddenly they're in the portal, right? We know this goes on in the back channels of social media, the under the table deals. So I guess my first question for you, fair or foul, spring games being canceled is actually a good thing for the stability of college football.
No, I don't think so. And it goes so much further than a lot of things. I think one of the tweets I saw, and I can't remember who posted it to save my life, but one of the tweets I saw that kind of made me go like, yes, this was someone talking about the fact that because the game has become so dang expensive and inaccessible just for the average fan, or if you're a family, you went to that college, you got a couple of kids, you want to buy, 4, 5, 6 tickets and go have a day out, enjoy a little like frozen lemonade thing or a hot dog or something, you're going to be in for a couple of $100 for most games if you're sitting and you're shaking hands with God. You're so high up, right? So if you're in that experience, the spring game makes lots of sense. You get to watch your team. It's not going to be a loss because you can't lose spring game. It's going to be a fun environment. They do like crowd work and there's like lots of fun community events. They'll bring back kind of legacy players to play a little flag at halftime or something. It's fun. It's a good time for everyone. Even my wife and I have been able to scoot down for a couple at A&M, right? We're Aggies, so we've been able to scoot down to a couple at A&M and enjoy that when in some years it's tough to make it to a game because, yeah, the ticket price is so gosh dang expensive. And it's just kind of unfortunate because it's going to remove access once again for a lot of people. I'm going to remove you and your ability to kind of see the games like you normally would. But from a talent perspective and the poaching talent and the portal implications and all of that, I really have a tough time feeling sorry for all these big programs like, oh, boo-hoo, your good depth is getting poached. All you have to do is wave some dollar bills at everybody else in the smaller school's main player because you saw a highlight on Sports Center or something like that. You don't have to do hardly any work. At least, these small schools are going through and scouting your spring game and doing some sort of evaluation. All you got to do is say, oh, that guy had 1,500 yards receiving for small school out of the Sun Belt. Yeah, he's going to be, next big thing at, University of Texas or whatever. I have a hard time feeling bad for some of these programs. It just, I understand you don't want to put your program in a vulnerable position, but at the same time, if they were good enough to be cracking the starting lineup, you put them in there anyways. This game has become so transactional anyways. So I don't think it's great for the sport. I think it's a logical conclusion, right? I can't tell you that if I was running a big program, I wouldn't do the same thing. But it's unfortunate for the sport. It's indicative of where we're going, and it's just kind of unfortunate for the whole thing.
I think it is, in a word, I think it's a further evolution of the corporate nature that this sport is becoming, right? As more and more TV dollars flood in and there's more money on the line for a couple of suits and boardrooms, the fan experience is quickly going by the wayside, at least the fan experience that can be easily monetized and extrapolated across multi-million, multi-billion dollar media rights deals, right? Because at the end of the day, that's all that we as fans are good for when it comes to the two super conferences and the Big Ten and the SEC. How can those fans be manipulated now into tuning in and behaving the way that we want so that the TV numbers look great enough and we get to continue to push that dollar amount higher?
Yep.
That's where we are in college football. And our last episode was Sam Kahn. He talked about many of the same things where now just a couple of stakeholders essentially determine the outcomes of not the games themselves, but the policies and the direction of the sport. And we pontificated for a little bit about how a collegiate football league, right, the professional version of this game, is probably right around the corner. I do wonder if maybe going to a professional model would allow the spring games to come back, because then if you have collective bargaining, if you have a way to tie players to institutions, whether they're employees or not, then at least this proposed issue of players stealing goes away. But I think the health of it is also a big factor as well. And, the player safety side, they just played the longest season in college football history, right? This last year. I mean, we as fans were tired by the national championship. There was real fatigue, and we just had to watch the games. We didn't have to practice and play and study and do all of that. So I certainly see both sides. It is unfortunate, though, that I do think whether or not we were having the health discussion, the C-suite would not really care.
Yeah, well, and the issue with the C-suite not giving any sort of care is because, the C-suite, they're going for the short-term dollar. They can see the dollar bill in front of them. They can shake the hand. They can see the contract come down, and that's great. But the problem is the lifeblood of college football has been the fan base for as long as it's been. You look at any sport right now, like most sports are really struggling to get people to care. Right, there's controversies even in the NBA around that Luka trade. There's like people saying, "Oh, they only did it to drive up ratings," and Adam Silver made it happen. It doesn't make sense. I'm not going to go that far to say that there's conspiracies, but like, yeah, it's that feasible that the NBA is having that many problems that they would force a trade like that because nobody's watching it anymore. Nobody cares about the NBA. They'll tune in for the finals, maybe the conference finals, but they're not going to tune in for a whole lot going on. Same thing with Major League Baseball. A lot of those stadiums stand empty for 162 games until, kind of interesting series or, like Paul Skeens is in town or something like that. But you have a lot of, sports that are kind of going by the wayside and dying off and people not really caring anymore. And if college football isn't careful, right, the people who can make the decisions, if it's the conference leaders, if it's somebody in the NCAA, I know that they don't have any power anymore, really. If it's the executives over at the Mouse, whoever it is, if they're not careful, the money's going to dry up because the fans are going to stop caring. I've talked to so many people just kind of casually that know that we do the podcast, know that we talk college football, and that we're big college football guys. I talked to so many people casually that are just like, yeah, I don't really watch that much anymore. Like, yeah, I'll tune in for the big ones, the rivalry games, but I don't really watch as much as I used to. And it's sad because I can't blame them too much. I mean, we talked about conference realignment. We've talked about all of that. It just kind of stinks because we're losing the passion and the fan base. And this is another way that you're doing that, is you're killing one of the things that's always been fun, connects your fans to your team, gives, your fans access to the team. When those players rotate anyways, and then maybe they're only there for money, and then you're going to play who cares on the other side of the country, this just all takes away from it. And it's sad to watch the sport go this way.
They inevitably will find the boundary, right? And I think football is the one sport that so far has not bumped up against that glass ceiling, right? Where we've tapped out fan interest, right? The NFL continues to grow in its popularity. Now, maybe you're starting to see some folks sour on it based off of the Chiefs' latest run and, the officiating and all of that. I think there are some natural boundaries that do curb fan enthusiasm. And you're right. College football may be bumping into some of those sooner rather than later, but they have been able to go further than Major League Baseball or the NBA have been able to go. And you're right. I mean, the NBA is in absolute crisis mode. Do I think that college football or the NFL would ever get there? I tend to think that football, at least in the United States, there's a much more of an appetite for that than, basketball is a global game, right? Basketball is not just a United States thing. But yeah, it is an interesting point, and it will be fascinating 10, 15, 20 years down the line to look at all the data points and be able to chart back like with Major League Baseball and figure out, oh my goodness, here are all the things that we did to actually shrink the game and make access terrible. And we didn't promote our star players and this, that, and the other. And to their credit, Major League Baseball has had a lot of green numbers over the last, I think, 2 or 3 seasons now where the game is growing.
Oh, yeah. Let's get better.
It's chess pieces moving around the board. And when you do make a misstep, there are real consequences. So we'll continue to obviously see how college football progresses. One of those teams, Garrett, that canceled their spring game, and listen, the attendance jokes that were made at this university's expense, I think top tier, well deserved. But I mentioned off the top that USC is getting a lot of ground support right now for an improved 2025. There's a lot of folks that are buying in on Lincoln Riley, that are saying that the defense is going to take a step forward this year, that somehow USC is now ready to start contending for championships again, even though they are well down the pecking order as it stands right now in the Big Ten. In fact, I looked at the FanDuel expected win totals this year that were just released today. It's February 24th for those that need a timestamp. USC's over-under is 7.5 wins. So I'm struggling to figure out where the support is coming from when you look at what Lincoln Riley has done at USC. It's been absolutely nothing spectacular. In fact, really, it's been a waste of talent and resources so far under Riley's administration. Yes, the recruiting is seeing a nice little uptick, but as Oregon fans were very quick to point out in the USC comments, which by the way, the Trojan social media accounts are retweeting commitment graphics. I didn't know that was a
Mhm.
thing. That's a separate sidebar. But Oregon fans were very quick to point out when USC boasted, "Hey, we have the top recruiting class for the year of 2026." Oregon fans were like, "Dude, you guys had that last June, and look where it got you, right? Nothing
Yeah.
special." And so help me make sense of this, because where I stand right now, yes, it's nice that USC is winning some recruiting battles. They're certainly going to have a lot of young talent, but they had a lot of established players leave via the portal or leave via graduation, and like I said earlier, they weren't winning games with all of that talent anyway.
Yeah, it's. I think it's a leap. And when you said 7.5 was their number, I immediately ran over to the schedule because I was like, this has got to be schedule dependent. It's kind of schedule dependent, but my issue is they go to Illinois this year. They've got Michigan at Notre Dame. They've got Iowa on the schedule. They go to Oregon. They go to Nebraska. There's some tough games on the schedule this year that, I'm not necessarily going to pencil in the win for the USC Trojans, but I think, man, I kind of go back and forth on this because there's a part of me that knows that like Lincoln Riley can run the offense. He can turn a quarterback into something. Um, and the offense always seems to be a pretty decent product out there. I guess the defense is improved off of like maybe the worst defensive coordinator we've seen recently. So I guess technically maybe improved, but you're still going to have to play some big boy defense before I trust you in the Big Ten. And you're also still going to have to prove that that talent doesn't just drop off. I mean, we're a couple years removed from a generational talent who's now, at the helm for the Bears. And, we're kind of moving on and figuring out like who's the next big guy and trying to figure out like who's going to be the next stud at the wide receiver spot. I know they had a bunch of transfers out there. I'm not going to necessarily buy it right now. And you kind of teased on the, front end about the attendance stuff, but that's kind of part of why is the culture doesn't really care around the school. The culture doesn't really care about winning as much because I know that USC, those games for a lot of their students is like the pregame for a night of partying, right? They go to that and then they show up to somebody's house party and then they just like kind of rock for the whole night. I don't know. Like, and again, I'm not trying to go too much into the outside of football sides of it, but I just don't know where the fan involvement is. I don't know where the enthusiasm is around the program right now, and that's what's going to have to win to get these guys to stick. Recruiting classes don't mean jack anymore. Being able to retain players and keep them on campus, that's what matters. And if you can't keep a guy on campus, great, congrats. He signed a paper with you and he wore your hat when he was a senior in high school. That doesn't matter, right? That none of that actually ends up meaning anything when he transfers to a rival within your conference, even, right? Like all those Oregon fans, you were saying, pointing it out, what happens when all their good players transfer up to Oregon? Just head on up the coast and now we're going to go play at Autzen. Like that's a thing that could happen. I don't know, man. I'm not in on the Trojans. I'm not necessarily a hater, but I also just don't necessarily believe in Lincoln Riley's ability to build a championship program. He didn't build it at Oklahoma. He maintained it at Oklahoma, kind of kept it on cruise control. Then he ran away basically because he didn't want to play in the SEC. Now he got stuck in the Big Ten. I don't think he really wants to be in the Big Ten either. I wouldn't actually be surprised if he's got one eye on the door, kind of thinking about like, when do I make my exit? Who's going to call me from the NFL and I'm going to take that job? I don't know. I'm not really sure where he is with that, and I don't trust him to build a championship program.
USC is the West Coast Ferrari right now. They've got a lot of speed. They're going to have a lot of sizzle. They're going to look great getting off the bus. But Lincoln Riley has never built a physically imposing football team, right? You mentioned Oklahoma. Yeah, they could win in a track meet, but when they absolutely needed to compete against the big boys from the SEC, they got beat up front in the line of scrimmage, right? We've seen that be an absolute disaster for most of his time out at USC, and he's tried to recruit guys up front, defensive line. The offensive line was cheesecloth for a time. Now, they've certainly made improvements on both sides of the ball, but we still haven't seen a USC defense specifically, and maybe D'Anton will turn it around, but we haven't seen a USC defense yet that's capable of even competing to win a Big Ten championship, let alone saying, yeah, let's hang the banner. They got a couple of guys from the transfer portal this year from SEC programs, right? Jarrett and Keyshawn Silver, I believe, both come over from Georgia, and then Silver was a former 5-star at Kentucky. So great. You're plugging them in the interior of the defensive line. It was an improved USC run defense last year. In the top 50, I think 53rd was where they ended up for 2024. But then the issue was the secondary. They were 98th in total yards given up through the air. I don't know if they're going to have enough in the secondary to continue to improve that drastically, right? You need to be able to see them take big steps. Furthermore, they likely have a 5-star that's going to push for playing time right away, right? And Hassan Longstreet. We'll see what the quarterback situation ends up looking like at USC, but we know that when Longstreet flipped from Texas A&M, the big push was, hey, you can come and play here immediately. You're not going to have to sit behind a Marcel Reed at Texas A&M. So, yes, I understand that, boy, there's a lot of really fun recruiting pieces coming in. There's a lot of exciting freshmen and sophomores that look good, that their high school film is really good. They played well in the bowl game. But when it comes to contending against that Big Ten schedule and being a team that's worthy of a 12-team playoff, I'm happily going to be at the back of the bus here. I'm not fighting to get that first seat like it seems like a lot of the media is right now. I'm perfectly content saying, Lincoln, I'm on the opposite side of you right now. I think you're on the hot seat. Show me what you got. And if he can, then great for him. Happy it worked out.
Right.
But so far, I mean, I just haven't been impressed with anything that USC has done.
Well, and the other thing about roster construction is, like, you can be excited about the players you have coming in, but you have to ask yourself what they're replacing and what you expect of them. Like, if Hassan Longstreet is that guy, what is he doing to replace the Caleb Williams followed by the Miller Moss? Like, what is he really improving on from that as a freshman? Like, maybe, in a couple of years he turns out to be incredible, but as a freshman, what are we expecting of him that's going to be so much better than what we saw out of teams that couldn't win at all, couldn't really compete with, like, a Miller Moss or like like I said, Caleb Williams? Like, what are we expecting from him? What are we expecting from pick a receiver that you weren't getting out of a guy like Zachariah Branch or, any of the other pieces? I mean, they've got a stable of guys that it seems like have rotated through there, and it hasn't mattered. They've had lots of really talented guys across the field. And, Bear Alexander went out there, and they're all the pieces, and it just hasn't actually turned into anything. You have to show me that those talented players turn into something and that you can develop players on campus, coach them up, put them in a position to win, understand what your players do well and what they don't do well, and then put them in that spot so that they don't fail. Like, they haven't shown me that they can do that consistently, and they certainly haven't shown me they can do that against the best teams on their schedule.
At Illinois, Michigan, at Notre Dame, at Nebraska, and then you got Iowa, at Oregon a little bit later on in November. It's not the toughest schedule that they could have had, right? No Ohio State, no Penn State, but certainly not a friendly schedule by any stretch of the imagination. So, listen, if you think we're just USC haters, comment. Let us know what your equation is that you're using to get USC to 10 wins, to championship contention. Because, I'd love to have that discussion with you. Maybe my personal formula sees parts out greater than parts in, but that doesn't mean I'm not the in the majority here. There's a lot of support right now for USC. So not hating on them at all. I'm just for me, just to make it to use a personal example, and we'll move on. This smells like Texas A&M superclass, does it not? I mean, and they don't even have a 5-star in their class yet, but this idea that, but we've been stacking recruiting classes, here it comes. And the rest of the country is like, yeah, but we don't think your head coach is very good. Yeah. Right. Like, where has that narrative, why has that narrative failed to go west to LA is my question.
I was going to move it 90 miles the other direction towards the west. I was going to say it kind of feels like they're in the middle of their Tom Herman out there at USC, where like you're going to get some big wins. You've had some pretty good seasons, but it hasn't really been what you expected. And for the talent you've had on campus, for the promise you've had of how good your coach is to be the guy, it just hasn't really turned into anything of real note. And I think that, USC, they may not have a Steve Sarkisian coming up around the bend. I don't know if that's true. But I think they're in the middle of a Tom Herman type of thing where you're going to get some big wins. You're going to have some great players that come through there. It's just not really going to turn into wins the way you probably want to. And a big part of that, kind of like what you've mentioned, it's been the lines of scrimmage so far. And so I think, it's time to probably say that, I don't know if Lincoln Riley can't win at all, but he may not be able to win the big one. And we certainly know he hadn't shown it at Oklahoma when he had a program built for him. And you want to talk about guys like Ryan Day being born on third base. I mean, Lincoln Riley was born on, halfway to home. So I don't know what he's supposed to say to defend himself at this point.
Yeah. Steve Sarkisian, former USC head coach, 2014, 2015. So
if only they could have had a guy like Steve Sarkisian.
If only. But listen, if you think we're just drinking haterade, you want to hear some good news, you want to hear about some teams that we are excited about, then welcome to the next segment.
Yeah, USC, turn it off.
It is time to buy some stock in these programs. And listen, I know it's only February, but I think that there are a couple of programs that already, based on their off seasons, warrant some nice, positive championship discussions, Garrett. And I think the first team that I have already been cautioned out the wazoo from social media is the Texas Tech Red Raiders. I am buying stock in Texas Tech. Now, if you are finding our show for the first time here in year 4, let me give you some background as to why that's so dangerous based on historical precedent. 2 years ago, Texas Tech was the new kid on the block, right? All of a sudden, maybe everything's going to run through Lubbock. We're really excited about what the Red Raiders are doing, what they're building. They're flashy. Didn't work out. Didn't get to Arlington, win a Big 12 title. Last year, we bought in. You and Trey just leading the charge for the Red Raiders. Oh, this is the year. There's no big power that's established in the Big 12.
Here they come.
It is guns up time in Lubbock. Didn't happen. We had some great wins.
Strike two
against Iowa State. Heck yeah, going up to Ames and winning that one. But then you get blown out by the hometown kid Sawyer Robertson and Baylor, and it's been those head scratching losses. The loss to Colorado at home, when boy you felt like you had them in the box. That have kept the Red Raiders from reaching that potential that we've set for them over these last 2 seasons. But that's the bad. Chuck it all out the window, because 2025, it's a new year. First of all, Texas Tech went and they decided, you know what? We're going to spend $10 million in the transfer portal to bring in guys that we think can win a championship. In fact, the mantra from the front office, and an actual quote from James Blanchard, the GM for the Red Raiders, he said, quote, "If a transfer can help us win, let's go all in." He and Joey McGuire talking about off-season strategy, what they're going to do. And they also have their biggest booster, an oil baron out there, just sold his company. It's like Double Eagle Oil or something like that. $4.2 billion. So they're completely...
That's about 4.2 more than I have, I'll tell you that much.
They are incredibly stocked in the war chest, and they spent $10 million of that. Originally, their goal was $5 million. And then basically they just kept throwing money out there, and players kept accepting it. So suddenly we double it. We got $10 million. Behren Morton, quarterback, finally healthy for most of last season. We started to see him put the pieces together for a Red Raider team that was in desperate need of a quarterback to play the whole season, to show what they've got, to give that offense some stability, right? Behren Morton started to provide that. Now, Taj Brooks, leading rusher all time at Texas Tech, he's gone. But they bring in Quentin Joyner from USC to come in and replace that. Hole filled. Joyner's going to be an excellent piece. They get elite edge rushers and Romello Height and Mike Green from Marshall. Mike Green, maybe you're not familiar with that name. He's a first-round prospect in next year's draft class right now. So they go out and they get quarterback hunters. That's what they've really needed since Tyree Wilson left, right?
Yeah.
And was drafted by the Raiders. Oh, by the way, they bring in two of the best coordinators, young coordinators in the game, in Mac Leftwich and Sheil Woods, who completely revamped the Houston defense. Sam Kahn talked about that on our last episode. All I'm saying is the Big 12, yes, has a couple of good teams in it. But the Red Raiders are investing in building a program's foundation that it's got me a little hot and bothered. Now, I'm not projecting them to win the Big 12 right now. Do not hear that on February 24, 2025. This is not a stone cold lock. Go grab a Texas Tech future bet. I am saying start to nibble. If you're going to diversify the portfolio, having a little of that Lubbock love out there, I think would be smart. So I'm going to take the Red Raiders as a team that I'm buying stock in.
Mitch, all I was hearing was that Stone Cold soundbite from a couple years ago. I was just hearing that the whole way. I was like, "Come on, Mitch, tell him how." No, it's a great pick, and honestly, like I don't want to do it again. You know, it's just kind of like I feel like I've been hurt too many times by these Red Raiders,
Sure.
And I'm like, no, I don't want to believe. You know, it's the meme of is it Endgame when Hawkeye's standing there? It's like, don't give me hope. You just no, don't do it. That's all that I'm seeing right now. But look, they've done a really good job. You clearly chalked it up. They've done great in the portal, and I think the bigger thing for me is just how much has left from the Big 12. Like, there's been a lot of players that have mattered to a lot of these teams leave. Right, Ollie Gordon's gone, Cam Scadaboo's gone, just about everybody at Kansas is gone. They're clearing out the cupboards there. I don't know if it matters if Cam Rising is gone or not. I think he is, but I don't think it matters at this point. He's basically gone. He's passed from this earth peacefully or something. I don't know. You got up and down. It's just a lot of people that have lost a lot of players. And it's not that nobody's going to be good in the Big 12. It's not like they don't have other things. I think Arizona State's still going to be a formidable team as long as Sam Leavitt's the quarterback. But yeah, like, why not Texas Tech? They got a lot of things going the right direction when a lot of teams are going the wrong direction. I think that this is a great pick. I think there's a lot of momentum in Tech's favor, and the schedule sets up kind of nice for them too. There's not a whole lot of teams that I think are like a massive threat on their schedule. I don't like that trip to Tempe. I think that's pretty dangerous. It's always dangerous going to Manhattan, Kansas. But outside of that, they get a bunch of games at home that, might be their tougher type of games. So I'm going to go with you a little bit on this one. I like Texas Tech.
Well, that was what kept me from going all in on them last year was they had really tough road games. This year, it's a very soft non-conference schedule. Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Kent State, who hasn't won a game in like 2 calendar years, in Oregon State. And then, it's probably a down Utah team with a head coach who's taken his farewell tour. You're at Houston, that I think is going to be a fun program, but you certainly should be ahead of what they're doing down there in Cougar Town. Kansas, we don't know. Arizona State, what's their new identity? Oklahoma State, like, we'll see how quickly do they pick up the pieces in Stillwater. And then, at Kansas State and home against BYU are probably their toughest 2 games there in early November. But you can look at that schedule and go, you know what? It could get fun. It could get fun for the Red Raiders. So anyway, just maybe monitor the situation. If you don't want to be on the cutting edge here, monitor the situation.
Set your notifications, right? But if the stock hits a certain price, you may want to think about buying.
That's right. So Red Raiders, I'm all in on. Your first team that you're buying stock in on, it is not a stranger to us or our listeners. Talk to me about Georgia Tech.
And it's not a stranger to my background either. If you look just over my shoulder, you will see that yellow jacket hoodie. Yeah, I'm talking about Georgia Tech. We've been in on the jackets for a couple years now. We were riding that Ramblin' Wreck. There's the meme. We've got it. It's incredible. But no, I think you need to buy into what Brent Key's doing. I think that he's starting to build the program that he's wanting to, and I think this is the year that they take the step forward. I really think that this is that year where they're going to make the next step. They're going to take it to a different level, and kind of here's why. So first off, you bring Haynes King back. He's a stud. He's a gladiator. We've seen it. We've seen him fight. We all watched that 8 overtime, or I don't know if it made it to 73 overtimes, but it felt like that game went on forever and ever. we watched that game against Georgia. We watched how he kind of gutted it out. And was he perfect? No, but he gutted it out against Georgia. And I think as long as you got a warrior back there like that, you're going to be all right. Jamal Haynes is coming back as well. Together, they ran for over 1,500 yards, and the rest of their team had like 900. You're bringing back lots of production in the run game, and I'm going to lean on that a little bit. They had the number 3 recruiting class in the ACC right behind FSU and Miami. And I really like that for them. By the way, neither of those teams on the schedule this year for Georgia Tech. So that's definitely something in their favor. But look,
missing Miami might not be in their favor. They've won 2 straight against them.
I guess you never know what's going to happen with Florida State either. Maybe they're a little bit down still. But, I mean, they recruit well, and I don't think anyone thinks Florida State's going 2-10 again or something like that.
No.
But, yeah, I think that'd be shocking, and we'd say bye-bye to Mike Norvell, but that's it. No, look, here's the thing. I think we all have seen what this program is doing, but really it has a lot to do with Brent Key and the toughness that he's bringing there. He clearly cares about the program, played offensive line at Georgia Tech, really cares about making this thing a stud and a champion. Building that in Atlanta, in the shade of Athens, Georgia, trying to figure out how to get out from underneath those Bulldogs and kind of assert yourself a little bit, not just in the state, but in that region, the Southeast, being able to recruit in that area, being able to pull talent out of the area, almost an impossibility. But what he's been able to do to make them formidable, I think, is going to finally turn around a little bit. The other thing that I really wanted to emphasize, looking at some of their schedule last year, just how close they were to really busting this thing open. They lost to Syracuse at Syracuse by 3. They had another closer loss to Louisville. It was 12, but it was, kind of closer. They had, again, that overtime loss to Georgia. That would have sent shockwaves through the country if they had ended up pulling that one off.
Sure.
And a couple of rough ones, Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, not their best. They lose their bowl game. I don't know how much, that was really, there's always up and downs and players playing or not, whatever else. But look, I think that there is a real opportunity for them to kind of turn this thing around, especially when you consider what the schedule looks like this year. This is why I'm buying a lot of stock here. They go to Colorado. They play the Gardner-Webb running Bulldogs. They play Clemson, which will be a tough one. They do get that game at home, though. Temple and at Wake Forest before they get their bye week. They go Virginia Tech, at Duke, Syracuse at home, at NC State, another bye week, at Boston College, Pitt, before they finish the year with Georgia at home. That is tasty to me. I like the way that looks. Just looking at it optimistically, you're going to say probably Clemson and Georgia are losses, but a lot of Georgia Tech fans are going to say, well, what else? I think we can win a lot of those games if I'm a Georgia Tech fan. So I'm going to roll with them a little bit. I think they're going to change some of those close losses to close wins. Much easier schedule this year than last year. And I think that toughness is finally going to start to peek through a little bit. They're going to tackle a little bit better, going to block a little bit better, going to run a little bit harder. I really like where Georgia Tech is as a program.
Over under is 7.5 right now. Whereas last year, I think it was 5.5.
They didn't expect them to make a bowl game.
They did not. And the money was coming in on the under. We were praying that they would get to a bowl game. Obviously they did and had a heck of a season. Yeah. I agree with you. I think a 4-1 start would go a long way to feeling like this is a team that could maybe do something special in the back end, right? If you can beat Colorado, it's going to be a entirely new look Colorado team there at Folsom Field on August 30th. We don't know what Wake Forest is going to be. They're probably a year or two away from being a year away. And so, yeah, it's a comfy on-ramp, I think, to their conference schedule. Virginia Tech, I wanted Brent Pry to work out. I don't know that that's going to happen, but there are certainly a lot of winnable opportunities for Georgia Tech for all of those reasons, right? Like the Yellow Jackets are a program now that have objectively raised that floor. And I think that's what's so exciting to see is it hasn't been overnight. It hasn't been a flash in the pan, but it has been Key and his coaching staff really investing in their program's guys. And it's a program that has an upward trajectory. I think I'm right there with you. I think I'm really excited about the Yellow Jackets and their future.
It's just a program that wants to gut it out, right? Like they're not doing anything that's necessarily revolutionary or groundbreaking from a, coaching standpoint. It's not like Brent Key's out here scheming up crazy play calls and you're like, whoa, I've never seen that play before, right? It's not anything like that. It's just attitude and mindset. Haynes King's passing numbers are not that great. He's not a bad passer of the football. They're not that good. If they're able to kind of build some momentum this year, maybe land a transfer quarterback who can take that up a level, right? And play a little bit better, maybe still have some of that grit to him, but can pass a little bit more effectively. Maybe keep things rolling that direction in the portal. They could become a destination. They're going to have to make some noise, and they're going to have some opportunities. Look, you play Georgia at home. I understand that Georgia team is a very good Georgia team, but they almost got them last year. I don't know that Georgia's better this year than they were last year, so we'll see what happens with it. But I mean, I'm excited to see what happens with this Georgia Tech team, and I'm going to be following them, buying their stock, and I'm gonna ride the Ramblin' Wreck just a little bit longer.
Getting kids to buy in from local, right there in Atlanta has been a big part of Key's strategy, and you're starting to see the recruiting results come. Mm-hmm. It's exciting times, I think, down there for the Institute. Let's go up to Big Ten country for my second team I want to buy stock in tonight. And guys, that is the Illinois Fighting Illini. I was really impressed with Illinois. And if you remember, at the beginning of last year, I was really skeptical about the Fighting Illini. I didn't think that Luke Altmaier was going to be able to turn around his turnover-prone nature. I didn't know if I believed in the run defense for Illinois, and I was kind of proven right with that. But the rest of the defense really stepped up. They were sneaky athletic on that side of the ball, ended up having almost a top 30 total defense. And the offense was able to play bully ball. And I think no more prevalent than it was against South Carolina, where, at least in that Gamecocks team, intimidated. They physically dominated folks down the stretch of the SEC. And Illinois stood up to them. And Luke Altmaier was able to drive the bus. His accuracy at times was very inconsistent, certainly once the competition ramped up, but he wasn't turning the football over, and he was giving his team a chance to win. Now you see Illinois bring a lot of production back, and they add a guy like Hudson Clement to that wide receiver core to replace a guy like Zachariah Franklin. I'm starting to buy Illinois as a potential Big Ten dark horse. I think most importantly, because Garrett, this schedule is very workable. They play one of the main championship contenders in the Big Ten. That's Ohio State. After that, here's their schedule: Western Illinois at Duke, Western Michigan at Indiana.
Could be tough.
Could be tough in Bloomington. We'll see if Indiana comes crashing back to earth or not. I know a lot of Big Ten insiders are certainly expecting them to take a step back, but Kirk Cignetti's been defying the odds his entire career. So at Indiana, they host USC for homecoming. We talked about that just a few minutes ago. At Purdue versus Ohio State, at Washington versus Rutgers versus Maryland, at Wisconsin versus Northwestern. Even if USC is better, even if Washington and Wisconsin take steps forward, like I would tend to imagine that they do, I think this is an Illinois team that could absolutely be knocking on 10 wins in the regular season.
Based on the schedule, because, Illinois impressed me, but, it wasn't necessarily like you guys are, hot shot, definite dark horse team, right? But, I mean, looking at this, that's about as good of a Big Ten schedule as you can ask for, right? It's not bad. I mean, you got to play Ohio State. That sucks, whatever. Like, that's part of it. You're going to play somebody good in the Big Ten. But, yeah, at Indiana could be a tricky one. And if I really want to try to convince myself of it, like if I wanted to be a real Illinois hater, I could maybe tell myself that like one of USC or maybe Wisconsin could turn it up and steal a win. That's 9-3. I really can't find 4 losses on this schedule. And that's like really trying to strain it too. I don't know that I can find more than 2 realistically. And I still think that game with Indiana is going to be one of those fun, like end of September games that we get to put as our headliner and really key into that one. I mean, game day might show up. That'd be a lot of fun. Both these teams probably going to be ranked and highly, touted at that point. So, this is going to be a fun Illinois team. And we certainly know that, Brett Bielema can get it done. We've seen him field good teams before. It's just about kind of finding the way to put it over the top and seal some of those big dubs. And he could go a long way doing that, even with the win over a team like Indiana, who maybe not as many people are expecting to still be that good, but is still a good program and just made the playoff. Like it's still a big deal to beat a team like that, even if they're not a traditional name or power. And so, yeah, I think you could have a great year for Illinois. And the best thing about it is, let's say that you stub your toe a couple times, you might be, what is that, 4-2, 5-2, whatever it is, heading into your bye week after Ohio State. You're probably going to cakewalk afterwards. Like, you can build some real momentum going into the back half of the season and then into like championship week and a possible playoff berth.
Yeah, if you read the SP Plus returning production from Bill Connolly for 2025, my two teams, Illinois and Texas Tech, 3rd and 4th in returning production, respectively. Illinois got 78% of their offense coming back, 75% of their defense. Tech has 68% of their offense. Taj Brooks, obviously a big subtraction there, but 82% of their defensive production. That is tops in the country. We've talked about returning production being a key indicator of success, especially in the portal era where experience and cohesion within a unit matters so much. Those are two teams that the metrics, the vibes, everything is saying go. So I'm giving you a buy signal. If you need a buy signal, here it is. I'm telling you to buy stock.
Not official financial advice, but
That's right. Unofficial. All right, bring us home. You've got you're also staying in the Big Ten, a team that I think a lot of folks are expecting to take some step forward, especially given the way that they ended their season. Question is, how big of a step forward will the Michigan Wolverines take?
And man, you were talking about returning production for Illinois. I'm pretty sure Michigan is about the biggest team that's excited they're not returning any production in that quarterback room. Somehow, a true freshman is bringing back 50% of their production, not having played last year because their quarterbacks were that god awful. They were so bad last year. We'll get to that in a second. Look, anyone who is writing off the Wolverines after Jim Harbaugh left, you might want to pump your brakes. This might be the time to get in while the getting is good. I don't know if you saw the way this team finished the season, but beating Ohio State, planting the flag, bar brawled right there on the 50. Yeah, Ohio State won the championship afterwards. I guess you got to eat that one. But you beat Bama to finish the season. You had a decent bowl game showing. That's nothing to sneeze at if you're a Michigan Wolverine, especially given the fact that I think there are a lot of people partway through the year that were ready to hit the panic button and ready to say, oh my gosh, did we make a mistake hiring Sharon Moore? Did we, completely rush it? Should we have looked outside? I can't believe we've done this. I think that was overblown. I think it's time to kind of buy back in. And I'll tell you why. Again, the main reason they were so bad last year was that the quarterback play was atrocious. I'm looking over here at their quarterback stats again. Their leading passer was Davis Warren with almost 1,200 yards. He had 7 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. That's not very good. And he was their leading passer. You had 2 other guys that tried. Jack Tuttle, he looked okay in spots. I think a lot of Michigan fans are kind of okay with him. 300 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Alex Orji, not a quarterback. Don't care. Not going to listen to it. As a unit, they threw for 1,600 yards, 12 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. That's trash. That's just bad. You can't justify it. It's so bad. And that includes like bad teams on the schedule that you can kind of pad the stats with. They still couldn't pad the stats. It was so bad. And that limited the run game. That limited what they were able to do, with kind of like time of possession, controlling the clock. There were so many games that I watched Michigan this last year and I went, well, this isn't a bad place to punt from. So when they go 3 and out here, they'll maybe be able to keep a little better field position. And that's the entire game for Michigan this year, was hoping somehow you get a turnover and it turns into the right thing. That will not be the case this year. Bryce Underwood is going to improve that. Even if you think he's going to have his little freshman mistakes and kind of, make some bonehead decisions, how much worse can the quarterback position get? Even if he comes in and plays like a high school senior and a guy who doesn't know how to run an offense at the college level, just the fact that he's got some athleticism and can sling it around, he's going to look better. I think he's going to look really good. I think he's going to be the next big thing at the quarterback spot. He's one of those guys I think we'll see in the conversation for Heisman, not next year, but in the years to come. I think he's going to be really, really solid, and I think Michigan is back on the way up. This is still the same culture. Again, Sharon Moore keeping everything in place. That's a big deal. And again, for me, it's all about schedule this year, being able to ramp up, build some momentum, and sell something next year in the portal. Here's what you got. You get to trade Texas last year for a trip to Norman. That's a great trade. I take that 10 times out of 10. I don't care that you have to go to Norman. Where OU is as a program right now, very, very bad. I would not want to be in those shoes. You look at the rest of the schedule, you don't play Penn State. You don't play Oregon. You don't play Indiana. You don't play Iowa. The only losers in that situation are the season ticket holders who have to watch kind of a crappy Big Ten schedule. That's really the only real downside to that. The hardest game on their schedule outside of Ohio State, which is in Ann Arbor. And oh yeah, by the way, I don't know if you remember this, the Buckeyes can't seem to beat the Wolverines, so I'm not even going to tell you that one's a loss. Their hardest game outside of that is what? USC? Nebraska? Maybe Wisconsin if they take a step forward? Like,
yeah.
Who are we talking about as a real threat on Michigan's schedule this year? It's hard to find a way to buy stock low on a team that just won a championship like 1 calendar year ago, basically. But that poor season the Wolverines just had puts them in a great spot to do this. I think they're going to silence the doubters. I think they're going to do everything they need to win games this year. I think that you could see realistically, and I'm not trying to pump the gas or pump smoke up their butts, but I think that there's a chance they could win 11 this year. They could be 11-0 heading into that game against Ohio State, setting up another top 5 matchup. It could be a lot of fun.
Michigan's over-under, according to FanDuel, is 8.5. So that's low given what you're looking at. Now, I'll tell you why I think 8.5 feels just a hair low, but I think that's probably the quarterback tax, right? Not knowing who we're going to have, if it is going to be Bryce, how he's going to take to college football, right? His second ever game, if he's a quarterback, will be at Oklahoma, right? Like, a team that, for all their offensive faults, has been pretty salty on the defensive side.
They've had good moments.
The middle section of their schedule, I think, is when we learn the most about this Michigan team, because at Nebraska, we'll see what Nebraska is. We'll see if Dylan Raiola takes that step forward. But Wisconsin, who I'm expecting to maybe be a little bit better, we'll see. At USC, with Washington, which I do think will be much improved this year. And then at Michigan State, that's going to be I think a lot of people are writing that game off just because Michigan State hasn't been relevant in the last couple of years. But Jonathan Smith has that team trending in the right direction. East Lansing is nasty at times, right? Listen, you don't have to tell those two schools about games in East Lansing. So I think that's maybe the trepidation that I have before anointing Michigan as a 10 or 11 win team. But the defense, the way that they've been recruiting, if they can improve that offense at all, just be efficient by...
how could you not?
Right. It
how much worse can it get?
It certainly feels like you could stumble into a better offensive outcome. So if they can do that, I agree. I think the Wolverines right back in there as a Big Ten contender.
And that's kind of the big point here is, we talked about, USC off the top, right? And how they're bringing in a lot of great players, but what are they improving on, right? I made that point off the top is that, you got a quarterback you can be excited about, but is he going to be better than Miller Moss? Is he going to be better than Caleb Williams? Like, what are you expecting in terms of improvement? For me, I would just say, like, where do you think Michigan takes a massive step backwards in terms of quarterback play? Like, oh, he's going to make a freshman mistake and throw an interception and whatever. They already threw 13 picks as a unit last year. He's going to not quite be as efficient with the ball. They passed for 61%, but it was like, on like no yards per. I think yards per attempt. I'm checking this. Yards per attempt was 5.4. Air yards per attempt was 4.3. That's stupid. I'm sorry. You can't play that poorly as a college football program and expect to win anything. I'm surprised that they even made a bowl game with those stupid numbers. It's going to be better. Like, he's going to add something to the run game. He's going to add something as a passer. Yeah, he might stub his toe early, right? Like, if you told me that he loses that game against Nebraska, I wouldn't be shocked. That's a tough game at the beginning of the season. But I think you give him 5, 6, 7 games in, he's going to start hitting his stride. He's going to have those guys around him that can really make it worth his while. I think this is going to be a really solid Michigan team. and this will be one of the better quarterbacks they've had in a while, kind of blossoming in front of their eyes. It's going to be a good Michigan team this year. I would smash the 8.5. Again, not financial advice officially, but I would smash that 8.5 number.
Well, let us know which teams you'd like to buy stock on. If you're agreeing with us, if you disagree, if you've got a reason why Texas Tech or Illinois or Michigan is just a trap bet, let us know. Write in at 3Tech Pod on all of our social handles. We appreciate the support. Gosh, the listenership for the Sam Khan episode through the roof last week, and I've got more guests that we're going to be bringing on all off season long. So appreciate the support, especially if you're a new subscriber to the channel on YouTube or Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your content. We're glad to have you. Yeah, lots more content coming up. We will do another buying stock episode for sure down the line. So as I mentioned, if there's a team that you would like us to discuss, write in. Let us know your favorite team, over, under, etc. For Garrett Turney, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Until next time, so long, everybody.
Gracious him. How about that?